So I want to talk this morning about the importance of leadership and how critical it is that we get that right. Years ago, I thought leadership was about being in charge. I thought it had to do with being the smartest person in the room and the loudest voice, and being a black woman, I thought it had to do with being strong and aggressive and intimidating. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, September 11th, my ideas of leadership changed when someone who also had an interesting definition or version of leadership interrupted the course of my dreams and my life with a 747 airplane. I was standing that morning at my assistant's desk. I walked in the office that morning all ready to fire somebody because we were having a problem with one of our major clients, and I was up the night before reading emails and trying to figure out what had happened and what went wrong and how I could save that client. I walked in that morning early, as I normally did, with my normal strut or swagger, as they call it. And I had my coffee and got my thoughts together and walked over to my assistant's desk and gave her the time signal, which was, I pointed to my wrist, and which meant she had 2 minutes to explain what went wrong. And just as she opened her mouth, I could see her body starting to tremble, and at the same time, I heard this incredible noise and felt this unbelievable feeling in my feet. And there was smoke and glass and furniture exploding all around me. I watched my assistant's body jump from her seat and start running towards the exit sign, and I froze. I froze in front of a window that was open, and I could see all of outside New York City and its grandeur and what I thought was success banging against the side of the building, including the bodies of some of my friends and a man that I thought I would marry. I was frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't think. Someone grabbed me, and I heard a lot of screaming and shouting and people saying the building was falling, and I looked up and there was glass and fire already coming through the ceiling. When I look back, and sometimes I see the news clips and I watch the building from the outside, what you saw, and you saw the smoke, and it looked from the outside as if there was just some smoke coming from the building, and perhaps there would be survivors, or perhaps the building would remain standing. But from the inside, where we stood, we knew that building was gonna fall. You see, when that plane hit the building, that building tilted and it rocked, and we felt it, and it never righted itself. There was papers all over the place, and I still remember the sounds of the screaming and the crying and the elevators and the people trapped in the elevators, and we all crammed in the stairwell trying to get out. I remember the news report saying that everybody was calm. It's an interesting perspective. I think we were all in shock. I think we all knew that all of our dreams were ending that day in those stairwells. So I want to get into your heads for a minute, play a little game with you. I want you to imagine, for real, imagine that this is the last day of your life. And for the next 10 minutes, are the next 10 minutes of your life. I want you to really consider where we were that day. Just pretend that you're not going to leave this room. And in this society, how we're living today, it could be possible, right? We go to church and we don't go home. We go to the movies, we go to concerts, we go to school, and we don't make it home. So let's pretend that we've all come to this Orange County leadership breakfast and we're not going home. We were in that place on that day. And as each of us came to grips with that, walking down the stairs, shoved in, I saw a man, fireman, running up the stairs and leading people down the stairs. One woman in particular with the flesh just hanging from her body in shock. I saw another man standing when one of the doors opened and we thought perhaps it was an escape path for us. And I stood there looking at him, immobile. And it was a few minutes before I realized that he was not attached to his body. How can I tell you what happened on 9/11 without talking to you about what happened inside of me and those who experienced it that day? I walked in that building that morning with an idea of what leadership was, and I came out transformed. I came out with an understanding of what it means to be not in charge, but in a role where people look to you for answers and look to you for meaning and look to you for guidance. I look back and I search the scriptures and I see how Jesus lived his life as a leader, as a servant, as a slave to us, being willing to be broken and brutalized and taunted and laughed at so that we could have eternal life. And that's the position that we're all in today as leaders. We have to be willing to be laughed at and mocked and disagreed with for the sake of those whose life we're impacting every day. There's a saying that says we have to live our lives as if it's our last. I don't agree. Those planes changed me. You see, halfway out that building, as we were walking through the concourse level, I was walking past a woman, and I'll paint a picture for you. Stay with me in this place, that this is the last place that you will ever exist on this earth. I'm walking through the concourse level, and there's a group of us. And all around us, there's fire and these little patches of people that are crying and terrorized because they're just shocked, they can't move. And we were being instructed to exit where the jumpers were. So outside of the broken glass, I could see all of the blood and the puddles of blood that we were walking through, and some of the women had removed their shoes, and I was looking at those spattered bodies outside of the concourse where we had to walk. And there was a woman sitting there, I thought, and she was trying to pass me a note. And I paused for a moment, and I recognized that she was burned very badly, and she was shaking, and she reached out to me with a note in her hand. And as she reached for me, I reached for her, and she passed away. And I heard her take her last breath, and I watched her take her last breath. And it took away my voice, and it took away my understanding, and it took away my reason. My position in my company was the operations director. It was my job to decide and to determine and implement the strategic direction of one of the largest insurance companies in the country. I was taught by one of the most brilliant minds in Manhattan, Michael Bloomberg, and there I stood in front of this woman, and I had nothing. I had nothing. Statistics say that during the course of our lives, 1 in 5 of the people that we come in contact with will pass away in our lifetime. So look around you and count how many people in this room are in their last days. And so here's why I disagree with living your life as if it's your last, because it's not our lives that matter. It's the life of the person sitting next to you. And it's the life of the person as leaders that you touch. It's the life, Judge, of those people who stand before you looking for the grace of God in you. And this is the commission that he has given us. That as leaders, it is our responsibility not to be in charge, but to be vulnerable. It is our responsibility as leaders not to have all the answers, but to seek truth. It is not our responsibilities as leaders to be aggressive and bold, but to humble ourselves and pray and understand that the person that we encounter could be in their last days. You never know when your words are the last words that someone is going to hear. You never know when your position and your title and your touch is the last touch that someone will ever have. And so I beg you, as Psalm 90 says, Lord, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Live your life not as if it's your last, but as if and knowing that it might be the last of the person that you're now encountering. Thank you for sharing your time with me.